Welcome to Trot Talk, an equestrian conversation with the American Saddlebred Horse Association. I'm your host, Tuffy Owens, and for our podcast, we're exploring the equestrians behind the horses, influencers in the industry, sharing their stories and giving a leg up to our community. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We're here at the beautiful home of Marty and Marianne Schaffel. So excited to welcome Martin Schaffel, El Presidente, as our guest today on Trot Talk.
Good to be here.
Well, hey, thank you for inviting us here. It snowed for the first time this winter in Pennsylvania, and we said, you know what, let's get on the road and go to Florida. So now we are on location, looking out over the, this is the Gulf of Mexico here on this side right here. It is absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful. You guys have been in this house for just about a year now, right?
Correct, yes. And it's very, very peaceful out here.
It is a very nice setting for a podcast. I'm sure the listeners at home are happy to not be able to see it. How did all this happen for you guys, Marty? Not the house and all this, but I mean, where you are right now. You're the president of the ASHA. How did that happen? I mean, you coming out of the University of Florida, I can't imagine that, ASHA president was on your list of things to do.
I confess I didn't see it coming. I was playing golf with a few guys, and they said, you should get more involved. And I said, how so? And they said, well, maybe you can fill a spot that needs to be filled for somebody who's resigning on the board. We need somebody to temporarily fill that spot. And I said, hadn't really thought about that, but if I can be of help, then I will. And next thing I knew, when that term expired, I got reelected. I didn't see that coming. And then when our executive director moved to USCF, and our president, David Mount, moved to fill the interim executive director spot. Next thing I knew, I was interim president. I didn't see that one coming either.
Well, I think there's a lot that you bring to the table in that role, though. I mean, you teach the courses in entrepreneurship, and I feel like that's something that it could be helpful in that role. Just kind of that kind of spirit of forward thinking and forward moving. Is that something that kind of you've seen in the first 4 months of your term as the president? Have you been able to use any of those skills that you bring to the table?
Well, the experience of being an entrepreneur and building a company, and then being at the University of Florida and teaching entrepreneurship, the one key thing that I identified as something that I hoped I could make a difference with regards to ASHA and UPHA would be to figure out how I can enhance the opportunity for professionals and breeders to be more entrepreneurial and more successful.
Yeah.
Since that was my course in life, and that's what I currently teach. So I really had a few quiet goals or desires during this interim position. The first one is, what can we do to ensure the likelihood of greater success and stability for those people who make their living in our industry?
Yeah.
There's a group of us who made their living doing something else and are spending it in our industry.
Right.
But our opportunity to enjoy what we're doing comes from the ability of our breeders and professionals to be successful. Desperate people do desperate things. And the best thing we can do is make sure that we help people have viable businesses so they're never in desperate situations.
Yeah. It's the professional versus the amateur relationship is such a chicken and egg, kind of thing. I mean, if you don't have professionals that are being successful, you're not going to draw in the amateurs that are, like you said, spending their own personal wealth to participate in this. And it's got to be fun. It's got to be fun for them. So if you are giving them a good experience, they will continue to spend their money. And if you were giving them, like you said, people in a desperate situation, you burn them one time and now you've lost somebody that could have been in this for a long time. And it's such a generational sport. you got to keep people engaged and keep people in it over the course of time, because Zoe, your daughter, is going to stay in the horse business. I am very confident in that. I do not see her, Yeah, exactly. Communication has kind of been at the center of everything that you've done publicly, in the first few months here that you've been the president of the ASHA. Where did that come from? And why has that been kind of so important to you? I mean, you've got your weekly letters that you send out. How did that kind of come about, in that idea?
Well, when I started my company 40 years ago with $2,000 to my name, and I hoped to be able to build a company, and I had no idea how big it would be. Mm-hmm. But it ended up being the largest in the commercial audio, visual, and video integration space.
So it went well.
It went quite well. It's been the largest in the world for the last 15 years.
Jeez.
And this year, I've since sold the company, but this year they're going to do $1 billion.
Wow.
So to have started it with $2,000, it was a great entrepreneurial experience. And I learned a lot along the way. And one of the things I learned was it's absolutely critical to communicate. Not only communicate to your marketplace, you also have to be able to communicate to your employees. I learned over time that when there is a vacuum of information, people will come from all different directions to fill that void. And most of the time it gets filled with misinformation.
I gotcha.
So it was my observation over the past several years that we had a communication vacuum, and we had all kinds of misinformation filling that void.
Okay.
So my number one priority was, how can we create transparency through communication? How can we educate through communication? And how can we create enthusiasm and success through communication? So the first thing I believed we needed was a communication plan and process. And typically when you embark on those, you adhere to them for a few weeks, and then they kind of fall by the wayside.
Right.
So the first thing I insisted on is that we come together and design and put together this communication plan. And 4 of us took money out of our pockets and paid a communication specialist to help get it done.
Okay.
And we formed a communications committee made up of members of the association who were like-minded and wanted to see us do a better job communicating. And we meet religiously every Tuesday morning by phone at 10 o'clock to review what the communication needs are for the week and interface with ASHA staff to get that information out. So I really just thought it was critical that we effectively communicate and educate, but we do it religiously, and I made it clear that as long as I'm involved, we will never deviate from our designed communication path. If it's once a week for something, or twice a week for something, or once a month for something, whatever it is, we don't let it slide, because once it slides, you lose all the credibility that goes with it.
You lose the momentum, too.
As long as I'm involved, I want people to expect a very consistent delivery of information and communication to them, whether it's expecting my column once a week, or maybe it moves to once every other week. But whatever it is, you can expect it to fall on that day every time.
Consistency hasn't always been the hallmark of any of the organizations, and transparency too. And it's difficult with, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. Why the transparency? Why did you think that was going to be something that would kind of keep everybody engaged and everyone moving forward in the same direction? Is that kind of the idea behind the transparency of the organization?
As I've noticed in several different nonprofits I've been involved in, there's always some group of individuals who make it their personal mission to be a disenchanted or disenfranchised minority. And those pockets of individuals tend to prey on the voids and vacuums of communication and information.
Right.
And the best way to address misinformation is consistent information.
Mm-hmm. No, you've done a great job with that, and I think the use of social media, what you've done, and then Jessica, the marketing director at the ASHA, I think has done a tremendous job as well of really kind of engaging the masses. But what you put out there, like you said, the consistency of it every week has kind of changed the game a little bit. It gives people something to talk about. That isn't just whatever they come up with. Like you said, the vacuum of communication. As I'm saying it, I am understanding the concept, because you give them you are pushing the dialogue forward that way.
And unfortunately, I can't always predict whether people will interpret what I write as what I meant. I got a little... I stepped into some controversy not long ago when I tried to create an analogy about the challenge in communication.
I had this queued up. Yeah. No, it was. I mean, the most benign reference ever, and I mean, the amount of just backlash was totally uncalled for.
Which goes back to what I said earlier about one never knows what happens in the world of communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in that particular case, I was just trying to use an example about how challenging it is to educate and inform an audience and a public. And I was trying to reference an article I'd read that morning in the Wall Street Journal or somewhere that 21% of our population was informed about the impeachment process. Just
informed, not like in favor or against. Informed.
Which shows that 79% of our population is not informed.
Right.
Which gets to the root of how do we properly inform and educate people about what's happening in the impeachment process.
Right.
Not should somebody be impeached or not be impeached?
Right.
Did somebody do something wrong or not do something wrong? Am I a Republican or am I a Democrat? Or on and on and on.
Right.
It had nothing to do with that. I was just trying to figure out how to come up with an analogy about how difficult it is to educate and inform a population. Well, obviously, I hit a nerve.
It was, No, it was, but I mean, it's the current climate, though. Like, I mean, you talk about starting your company with $2,000 in your pocket. The climate of communication and society then versus now, it's unrecognizable.
I didn't see it coming.
Right.
But I heard it when I came.
Yeah, but I mean, and your response to it was perfect. I mean, you apologized and kind of restructured what you were saying and explained your analogy. I mean, like I said, it was the most benign thing that has ever been on the internet. But you talked a little bit about starting AVI. Tell us a little bit about that company and that process. We skipped from $2,000 to, it's doing $1 billion this year now, after you've sold it. But kind of take me through that entrepreneurial process of growing that company up.
Well, I found that I made the world's worst employee. I always had my perspective on how I thought things ought to be done, and I didn't always agree with who I worked for. So it became obvious that if I wanted to be gainfully employed, I had to start a company. So I was down to my last $2,000 when I started it, and I spotted a product that I was really excited about. And to my name at the time, in 1979, I had $2,000, a paid-for beat-up station wagon, a $400 a month apartment. I was single, and I had a dog.
There you go. Got to feed the dog.
And that was my world at that point. And so I spotted this product, and I went to them and said, I want to start a company around selling this product. And after going back and forth, finally agreed on it. I needed $10,000 to be able to buy my opening order to resell the product. I only had $2,000. So I had them send me the product to my apartment, UPS COD. And let's just say that fortunately things moved very slowly in 1979. And I was able to get all the products sold in 48 hours. And
desperate people do desperate things.
Yep, and it's that understanding of exactly what you just echoed back that caused me to believe why it's so important to help, people get their businesses going and thriving without being pushed to the edge. So I was the first employee, and I realized that I was selling products and services to customers. That was my job description.
Right.
And then I realized that there are certain things that I didn't do well, and there are certain things I did do well.
Mm-hmm.
I was good at sales, but I wasn't bad at, typing invoices and many other clerical functions. So I started hiring employees, which meant that I also had to sell more and hire salespeople. So it didn't take long before I had employees. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that my job description changed. It started selling products and services to customers. Then I found that I was still selling, but I was selling a different commodity to a different group. I was now selling a vision of opportunity and success to my employees.
Okay.
And that it was my belief that if I could help them be successful, that I would be successful. And I hired the best I could. I was extremely loyal to them. I did everything I could to help them be successful. And in return, they helped me be successful. So when I sold the company, I had a big void in my life. And the void was that I was no longer running a company where I was involved helping all these people be successful in their lives. So that's when I joined the faculty of the University of Florida. And I'm now spending time working with students, helping them get ready to get out in the world and be successful. And I've gotten so many messages from students who have gone on and graduated and send me a note thanking me for the impact I had on where they're at in their careers. And it's just hugely rewarding. So I know I'm making a difference. I know I'm changing lives.
That's awesome.
It's incredibly rewarding. And I drive up to the University of Florida every week, and it's a 2 to 3 hour drive, and it feels like 10 hours on the way up. But I come home so invigorated and just on such a high from spending time with the employees. It feels like a 5-minute ride back.
Well, and you get to go see Zoe, who's up at the university. Well, until Saturday, graduation on Saturday, right?
And then she graduates.
Oh, my goodness. Well, hey, we've got the backstory down. We're going to take a little commercial break, come back, and now we get to talk about Zoe and the family and how you actually got involved in the horse show business. We'll be right back on Trot Talk. Did you know the ASHA offers membership benefits? It's the only way you can earn ASHA high points for all divisions and disciplines, National Pleasure Awards, and eligibility for year-end awards, grants, and scholarships. Don't forget to renew your membership or sign up for one from November 1st to December 1st at saddlebred.com. Well, welcome back to Trot Talk with Tuffy. We're here with Marty Schaffel. We've been kind of discussing a little bit about your background. Now let's talk about how you ended up in the saddlebred world. What happened, man?
Well, when Zoe was 5, we were on a vacation out in California or Colorado somewhere, and we passed a little place that had a sign that said horseback riding.
Uh-oh.
And I said, what the heck, let's pull over and put Zoe on a horse. And so we did. He pulled over and said, hey, we got a 5-year-old girl here. We're curious to see whether we can give her a little horseback ride.
Maybe she'll like it.
They had this monster horse by the name of Mouse.
Mouse, of course.
And put Zoe up on this horse, and that was it.
Yeah, right.
It was transformational. And there's nothing else that she got involved in after that she liked as much. She was involved in gymnastics and tennis and different things, but piano lessons. Nothing that she was involved in captivated her the way horses did.
The equipment in those is a lot less expensive.
Yes. Yes. There's no question about it. Tennis racket is a lot cheaper than a horse.
Yes.
But
and they eat less, too.
But so we came back, and several months went by, and I was talking to a cousin of mine who lived on the other side of Tampa, and talking about horseback riding or Zoe liking horses. And my cousin said, "There's this barn not far from where we live. It's like right behind our house, and it says horseback riding lessons."
There you go.
And I said, maybe Zoe and I will come up and visit you, and we'll walk over and check this out. It turned out it was Ruth Gimple Stables, and they had saddlebreds.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about horses. I didn't know what a quarter horse was, or a thoroughbred horse was, or a standard bred, or a saddlebred, or anything else. I grew up in the city, and I didn't even know which end of the horse was what. So we put Zoe on a horse, and I remember Ruth saying, well, at her age, the lessons are 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I said, well, let's see how she does in 20 minutes. If she wants off in 5, take her off in 5.
Yeah.
If she wants to stay on, let's keep going. Well, it was 20 minutes of heaven for Zoe.
Of course.
And Ruth said, lesson's up. And I said, well, let's have another lesson.
Yeah, let's go.
2 hours later.
Oh, boy.
Ruth said, I can't go anymore. Zoe didn't want to stop.
Yeah, she was like, all right, let's keep going. Oh, my gosh. So she still hasn't.
Zoe had these marathon lessons because I said, if she enjoys being on the horse and the horse enjoys Zoe being on her, let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, the horse probably didn't even know she was on there at 5. I mean, Zoe's,
So that was how it started.
That's great.
And that was our introduction into saddlebreds.
Yeah.
And Ruth was her first instructor. We eventually connected with David Kretchen. And to let you know how little I knew about horses, one of my favorite stories is I was on a golf course one day when Zoe was about 12 years old, and my friend says, Zoe's still into horses? And I said, yeah. Is she riding? I said, yeah. She said, he says, well, you better watch out. You coming from a city and so on. They're going to see you coming a mile away, and somebody's going to sell you a $20,000 horse for $75,000.
Okay.
And I stopped in the fairway, and I said, Tom? He said, what's wrong? I said, well, I just bought a horse for Zoe last week. I said, where were you last week? He said, well, how much did you spend? And I said, $75,000. And he said, well, what kind of horse did you buy? And I said, brown. He said, that's a color. I said, yeah, I know. He said, well, what kind of horse was it? I said, brown. He said, well, do you at least mean chestnut? And I said, no, I think it's brown.
Oh, boy.
So that, my folks, is the depth of knowledge and experience of the interim president of the American Saddlebred Horse Association.
I feel like you've come around since that. It's the brown one. That one, brown one. Oh, my gosh. It's funny you talk about the cousin getting into this whole mess. The exact same reason that I'm here doing the interview with you is because my dad had a cousin, and she said, oh, yeah, take him over to this place and take the riding lesson. And it was a saddlebred barn, and, I mean, it went from there. That's the same father who said, I'm not getting involved in that horsey set, and then bred several world champions. And yeah, you dads come along real quickly when you see how happy it makes the kids. But so I mean, yes, you've taken that and you've developed a great string of horses for Zoe to show. I think you're into the breeding end of it now a little bit, aren't you?
A few a year, not a lot. The first one that we bred, magnificent horse. Helena Moreno just bought.
The black horse, yeah.
Yeah.
And that one is black. That's the right color.
That one is black. Yeah, we got that right. He is a huge, sweet, magnificent horse, and it is a real thrill to see the joy that it brings Helena. And he is a great horse. So Zoe is transitioning from being a college student and riding and showing for fun to embarking on finding her place in this space. Her love and passion is horse rehabilitation and therapy.
Oh, okay.
And helping with the health and well-being of the structure of a horse. And I think she'll successfully build a practice around that.
That's awesome. I mean, the kid's a horse lover, obviously, but she's an animal lover. I mean, I've just met Johnny Cash, the adopted greyhound. I know, Florida voted out the dog racing, and there's thousands of greyhounds that need adopting, and that's a lovely one right there. He was, pressed up against us and, welcoming us into your home here. But I mean, yes, it's that love of animals in general that's gonna take her down that path. Now you talk about horse therapy. I mean, what kind of stuff? Like just rehabilitation, or just like some of the stuff that we do at horse shows, like the Magnawave and the Pulse and that kind of thing.
Magnawave is a key part of what she's doing, as well as using cold and other techniques.
Mm-hmm. The program that you guys have with David Crutchian, he's kind of been guiding the ship for a long time now. What's the next step forward? I mean, is Zoe going to transition to showing as an amateur, and the babies are coming up? I mean, what's kind of the plan moving forward, or is that not your department?
Well, I mean, there's several moving pieces. We have this Perfect Touch Farm, which is actually the name of the first horse the brown horse.
The brown horse
that we bought.
You didn't call it Brown Horse Stables?
His name was the Perfect Touch, so the name of the farm is Perfect Touch Farm.
Okay.
And he's out in the fields, retired there, enjoying Kentucky life. So we'll be up at the farm in summers and down at the stables here in Tampa in the winter. And Zoe will work, I assume. I mean, it's up to her to build her business plan and build her business. I know that's her passion.
Yeah.
But it's up to her to define what the business mission will be and execute on it. So that's what she's working on now, and she graduates another week, and then she's made it very clear that that's what she wants to work on.
That also makes me feel very old that Zoe's graduating college, by the way. How did you guys decide to do kind of like the snowbird thing with the Kentucky string in the summer and moving up to that farm and purchasing that farm in the first place? How did that idea come about?
I was in the mountains with some friends playing golf and saw some beautiful homes.
A lot of bad things happen when you play golf for you. I don't know.
It's really true. This one was expensive, and I said, God, I'd love to have a house here in the summer in the mountains. It was in Park City, Utah. And it was gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
And then went to go get Marianne and Zoe in Louisville, and was all excited about talking about maybe getting a house in the mountains, at which point they made it clear to me that, we've decided we really want a farm in Kentucky. And it really wasn't a fair fight.
Yeah.
And now we have a farm in Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say on the board of the Scheffel household, they outvote you 2-1 on that one.
I felt like it was 99%, 1% the way the voting went down. That's kind of how that felt. So, but anyway, it's a great farm, and have enjoyed spending time there. So, so far between being in Kentucky in the summers and being at this venue here in the winters.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's, I've been blessed. I've had a very, very fortunate life. Worked hard to be able to try and build a company and have an opportunity to be able to do everything I can.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now, going into segment 3, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the future of the business and your kind of plans for growing the saddlebred business as we go forward. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Trot Talk wouldn't be possible without the support of the United States Equestrian Federation. USEF is dedicated to uniting the equestrian community, honoring achievement, and serving as guardians of equestrian sport for every horse lover. Discover more about the USEF by checking out their website, usef.org. Well, welcome back. We're here with Marty Schaffel, a beautiful home overlooking the Gulf of Mexico here. It's a beautiful setting, Marty. Talk to me a little bit about the future of the saddlebred business. We were kind of talking about that in between during the commercial break there, and why is it that you want to be involved in the leadership of the ASHA?
Well, I know that our industry is something that my daughter is very passionate about, and so many other friends that I have, their kids want to be in this space as well.
Right.
And if we're going to pass this on to the next generation, I want to do everything I can to make sure that we pass on something better to them than we had. Mm-hmm. So many times you hear people talk about making the world a better place, passing a better world on to the next generation, and I think that applies to what we're passing on in the industry that we're involved in, and I particularly believe that for the American saddlebred horse. One of my concerns is as the price of entry to the American saddlebred grows, you end up destroying a market, not growing a market.
Okay.
When too few people can write checks to too few people who are around to receive the checks,
right,
you have the definition of a terminal death sentence to an industry. It is not a viable market. As far as I can see, and it's just one opinion,
right,
but it's just based on my experiences over time, the more vibrant and bigger we make the market, the more likelihood everybody in it will be more successful. And the more likely it will be that this will be bigger and better for the next generation, and even bigger and better for the generation after that. So it's really critical that we do everything we can to expand the size of the market, to make it possible for people to enter at different income levels.
Yeah.
And to make sure that we have financially viable and successful professionals and breeders and vets and everybody else that's affiliated with the space. If we don't make sure that we broaden the market and make all of these participants financially stable, it's really the death of our space.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who are writing the checks, who are the participants, it's not life-threatening to us. It may affect our happiness, but it doesn't affect our livelihood.
Right.
So some people say, well, what do you care? I care because it all dies if we don't make sure everybody's successful.
Well, as the husband of a horse trainer, I certainly can identify with that. She was in a meeting that you guys had at the UPHA convention conference several years ago. I think it was you and Alan Bosworth were giving a talk to the UPHA young professionals. And one of the takeaways that she had from there was just keep moving forward, and if you have an idea, do it. Do it now. Don't wait and say, I'm going to do this, at some point in the future. I'm going to do that, do it now. Is that kind of something that you're trying to instill in people and maybe in the ASHA board itself?
Well, as I was saying earlier, Warren Buffett says the likelihood of a successful entrepreneurial venture comes from how soon in life and how early you start. One of my favorite lyrics in a Bob Dylan song called Like a Rolling Stone. One of my favorite lyrics in there is the line where he says, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose.
All right.
You come in this world with absolutely nothing. You leave this world with absolutely nothing. The most you're going to take with you is a suit or a dress.
Yeah.
So you need to take, if you want to have your hands on the steering wheel of your life, and if you want to create a venture that you're really passionate about, you need to pursue it. Now, I say calculated risks. You have to have a vision and a plan, and you have to be able to execute on that.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to do it when you don't become so risk averse when you have wife or husband and kids and cars and houses, and you become more and more risk averse as you accumulate responsibilities and assets and debt. So it's very important that you start early, that you be very clear in what you're going to accomplish, that you attack it with great perseverance but also humility, and you take a calculated risk. You seize an opportunity, but you're not reckless. It has to make sense and be logical what you're attempting to do.
Right.
But that's what we need people to do. And I am grateful for one of our board members, Owen Weaver, who's taken significant money out of her pocket and is funding a consultant at her expense to help numerous businesses in our space get business advice and consulting to help them be more viable. It's a program that she's funding on behalf of other people in other members in our space. And I think that's a relatively unknown story that is talks about the kindness and generosity of people like Owen on the board who are trying to make sure that our industry is successful by helping other people be successful. She epitomizes it.
Yeah, I mean, just because you can work a horse doesn't mean you can run a business, and to have that kind of a resource to kind of help people on that end of it, that's huge.
Some of the principles that I think people have to take into account when they start a venture or sustain a venture, or oftentimes you have to reinvent yourself in the middle of your venture. I had to reinvent my company 6 or 7 times over 40 years. But it's very important that you try and determine what you can absolutely be the best at or second best at in your industry or space. And that has to be your goal. The second one is you have to really be passionate about it. If you're not going to enjoy doing it. Number 3, you can't totally be focused on the money. If you get up every day and you do the right things, the money will come. If you get up every day focused on the money, not on the right things, the money will never come.
No, that's true.
And it's very important to be able to understand the economic drivers of whatever it is you're doing. You need to be really clear on what revenue streams you pursue and how you measure those revenue streams.
We've talked a little bit about barriers for entry for people coming into the business, but I think for horse trainers starting their business, there are barriers for entry. I mean, if you wanted to go out and hang your own shingle, it's almost impossible for somebody that's relatively younger, doesn't have a business, well, they obviously have a business plan, but the business record behind them out on their own, to get a commercial loan to go and buy a horse farm. What are we doing as an organization to kind of help bring in new professionals into the horse business?
Well, I think people come into this business because of their passion for the business. People not passionate about horses are not likely to try and start a business in this
right,
space.
Exactly.
So that meets one of the key criteria that I think is important. And we have to find ways to create price points that will expand the market. It's naive to think that you just draw people right in from their first horseback riding lesson to buying $1 million horse. There's a progression. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to broaden and develop the teaching of lessons. And obviously, look what happened. Innocently putting my daughter on a horse. We're pretty active participants.
Well, they even got you into it. I don't know that they were like, all right, here, drive this one. This one goes fast.
and I'll talk in a minute if you want about how I ended up participating myself. But the first thing is horseback riding lessons. So I know that I've had some discussions with some folks recently about what can we do to expand the way that we can broaden the market for horseback riding lessons.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, the horseback riding lessons, but for me, there's a lot of people that can afford a board and training bill every month as a set expense. But if you then go to that person who's paying $800 to $1,200 per month as a set expense and say, oh yes, and now give me $300,000 of your dollars to go buy the horse that you can show, that's a totally different thing. Now, if you went to them and said $30,000, now we can have a conversation. You know, it is certainly a price point thing, but those horses that you then purchase at that price point have to have a place to compete. You know, and I feel like our focus as an industry as a whole is so focused on competing at the highest of levels. We need to create that middle market though, and I'm not the one to know how to do that, and I don't know if anybody is, but where are you at?
I would say that it's I spend hours on the phone every day since I assumed this role, and I would say one of the hottest topics that I'm dealing with is how do we expand the number of shows, and particularly how do we have the kinds of shows and classes that people can compete in who can only afford that style of riding and horse. Right. And I'm personally motivated to push as hard as I can to create, as best we can, the every man's opportunity. The working person's opportunity. Because if we limit this only to those who can write 6 and 7 digit checks, it's not a viable market. There's just too few people who exist to support that kind of a market. Right. And if for any reason they're ill treated, you know, you lose a big chunk of your marketplace when you just lose one of them.
You just lose one of them, and exactly.
So it's a pathway to extinction as opposed to growth and opportunity. Yeah. If we are just focused on the last day or two of Louisville. Exactly.
Well, speaking of the last day or two of Louisville, you've been there and showing. How did that happen? I mean, how did you end up in the bike with the road horse, and how did they kind of rope you into that idea?
Well, go out to the barn when Zoe was riding, and I've been hard on my knees playing tennis and snow skiing and so on. Yeah. So when I'm on top of a horse, my knees hurt a lot being bowed out.
Oh, right.
I was out at the farm one day, and I thought, the trainers are jogging these horses. Hey, let me get behind a horse and just walk them around the property. Yeah. So I would just start walking the horses around the property to exercise them and weaving in and out of trees. Right. And just trying to get comfortable walking the horse around. Yeah. And then I think I had my first showing. Then I started, riding them, driving them in a ring, and getting used to commands and speeds and so on. And then I think I showed a pleasure driving horse a short period of time, and then I got moved up to a road pony.
Okay.
And did that for a while. The only time I ever got a first place that I can recall was when I was the only person in a class. And I would get really frustrated because I would feel like I was screwing up royally, and I'd come back to the barn and everybody go, "What a great job, fantastic." And I got, "Geez, I screwed up. I got last place, and you're telling me great job." I just didn't understand this concept of positive reinforcement to the extreme. But that's something that's really nice about our particular space, is it is designed to help build self-confidence. And I was mocking the idea that I could have taken my horse up in the stands, and they would tell me what a great job I did.
Well, it's not about the ribbon; it's about the ride. That's the old mantra, right?
So I had a little trouble understanding that, but now I do. So, and then I thought, I was watching people drive these road horses, and I said, "Man, that's just that's the height of thrill." Yeah. But the ring that we had in Tampa just didn't work for that. So I thought, well, there's this 1 acre property adjoining the farm, and David Tuffy owned the farm, not me. So I said, well, what if I bought that acre and we put a ring on it? And this guy wanted to sell it, so we bought the acre, put a a full track on it. And then I was in a discussion about buying another road pony because I never was able to do well with the road pony I had, and was kind of assumed that she was just not destined ever to be able to show very well. So I was in a discussion about buying a road pony, and the price asked for the road pony was pretty high, and I just happened to get into a discussion with John Walker about I Am Not a Cow.
Yeah.
And for the price that we were talking about this road pony, he was promoting I Am Not a Cow. And I said, well, I tried to drive once before, but I didn't do very well. He said, come on, let's go drive him again. So we were at Asheville or somewhere, and I took him around the ring a few times, and he just felt fantastic. And of course, we weren't going drive on, but we were doing we were trotting in Roadgate, and I was more confident. I had a lot more experience at this point, and he was further in his career, and bought him and brought him back to this track we built, and the rest is history. We won in our first year. He's just been an amazing horse. We have done really well together. And then once Zoe decided that she was willing to I said, you can do this. And I said, come on, take him for a spin. And her face lit up when she was driving him. And then I said, has anybody in our history, has there ever been a father-daughter take the same road horse and compete at Louisville in the youth division and in
youth and amateur,
in the amateur, and didn't appear that ever happened, and then we both won. It's like, wow, this
is great.
And we have these pictures of both of us, getting ribbons in the same year.
Awesome.
It's just been fun. So he's been a great piece of our history and involvement in this particular space.
It's fun to see you out there. You look like you're always having fun, and I mean, to be able to share it with the whole family that's what the whole saddlebred and show horse industry is all about, is family. I mean, familial in your own entity, but then the space as a whole. I mean, it is one big horse show family. But
the majority of kids who ride are young girls, and there's a lot of dads who come and sit there and watch while their kids out there riding, and there's ways to have fun as well. And
not just go play golf.
This is the one that I found, and I really enjoy it.
That's awesome.
I encourage other people to give it a try because it's fun.
Well, we wrap up with the rapid fire round every time on our podcast here on Trot Talk. Just a series of lightning round questions here. But so you haven't seen these before? Here we go. Greatest horse that you've ever seen of any breed?
I really liked that horse that Debbie Foley had, Annabelle.
Cowboys Annabelle Allison,
I like that horse a lot. And of course, I'm hugely biased toward I Am Not a Cow.
Well, the next question is greatest horse you've ever ridden or driven, so...
I Am Not a Cow.
That's an easy one.
What's really fun with him is before we go in the ring, I'll stand in front of him and I'll go, are we going to win? Are we going to win? And he'll shake his head up and down and go,
I don't know what the translation is, though, but it usually works out to yes.
I think the translation is stay in the cart.
Yeah, right. You stay in the cart. I'll do my job. You just stay out of the way, buddy. Okay, the 3 people to dinner question, always popular. If you could bring 3 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be for one dinner party?
There's a commentator that I find very fascinating. His name is Fareed Zakaria. And I find him to be extremely, extremely fascinating to listen to. There's a legal analyst who I think is very fascinating that's on the airwaves named Jeffrey Toobin, and his analysis is very fascinating to me. Obviously, I'm a news junkie, and foreign affairs, political science was my first major before business.
Okay.
I tend to like that, and I would think it would be very interesting to sit with Warren Buffett.
Yeah. That was in the back of my head as one of your answers. Like, I think he's going to go with Buffett at some point. We might have another I Am Not a Cow, but what's the craziest name that you've seen for a horse?
To this day, when I tell people the name of my horse is I Am Not a Cow, I've never seen another horse name generate so much discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
I am not a cow.
Exactly.
So I got to ride with that one.
I think we might have already answered this one, but what's been your favorite memory from your equestrian life so far?
It broke my heart that I won at Louisville before my daughter, and that was painful for me. So the great moment for me is the time that she won Louisville, and that, in the same year we both were able to congratulate each other.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One last meal, what would it be?
I have been working very hard to perfect how to grill a steak.
Okay.
And using different kinds of preparation methods, and a method called sous vide, which is kind of a cooking method. So I would say a really good Wagyu beef, New York strip, or Delmonico steak that I have seasoned and prepared.
I love it. I love it. Well, Marty, thank you very much. Wrapping up this episode of Trot Talk. It's been great chatting with you, talking about your leadership and experience within the business. It's been a great story, and I hope everybody tunes in and listens. It's been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining us on Trot Talk. Thank you all for listening to Trot Talk. We hope you enjoyed the ride. The ASHA is committed to promoting and protecting the American saddlebred horse for a brighter future full of ASB dreams. I'm Tuffy Owens. Keep listening and trot on.